Hey folks, welcome to the channel. In today's build, I'm going to be forging a bowie knife out of this Damascus. I made this Damascus a year ago, so I'm going to show you the clips of when it was made. Here's our starting stack. Alternating layers of 15 and 20 and 1084 with that shiny nickel in the center. First we got to forge weld this stack together in one solid piece of steel. Now we're going to work on reducing this to a square bar. Now we're going to do a little distortion on this and knock in the corners on this square bar. It's going to look something like this. Now I'm going to forge it into a flat bar again, and that's going to turn it into these, and that's what we call C's. I've cut our bar into 5 and restacked it with 1084 in between, and now it looks like this. Once again, we got to forge this into one solid block, and we're going to do that over a couple of heats. I'm getting the block to a complete square, and then just like before, I'm going to knock in the corners, but this time I'm going to leave it re-squared on that new bias. Once it's fully re-squared, it's going to look something like this, and you can see how the layers have changed. Now we've taken our bar and cut it into 4 and stacked it around itself like what you see here, and also put some more 15 and 20 in the center to make that cross. After forge welding the block together, we're just going to keep it square and draw it out into a long bar, because we're going to 4-way this again. Our pattern's looking pretty cool, but now we're going to distort it one more time. After we forge welded the block together, again, we're going to knock in the corners, and that will change that very linear 15 and 20 lines into more ovals when we tile it together. Because our pattern is only on the end of the billet, we need to slice it up into tiles and tile them out. For the cutting edge on this knife, I'm going to use some twist damascus as the edge bar, and we'll weld that to our current damascus. There's something really satisfying about twisting damascus. I had one piece in the center that just wasn't twisted enough, so I decided just to heat that section with the induction forge and then twist it. So here's the billet after the tile weld. I haven't taken the outside sacrificial steel off just yet, but I have ground the edges because I'm going to take the twist damascus that you saw me make, and we're going to weld this onto the edge. I'm going to be stripping this down. You can kind of see these lines. I'm going to be grinding that off and then actually shaving almost half of this off, and then it's going to get welded to the bottom. We're going to forge weld that. I'm going to put a little piece of sacrificial steel on the top, just so that when I draw it out, the ends of the billet don't split. It'll just be a little insurance. So here's the test etch on our steel so far. We can see that these kind of diamond shapes are about twice as high as they are wide, which is perfect because we need to draw this out because it's still over a ½ an inch thick. So we're going to stretch this out with the rolling mill, get these back to square, and we should be perfect. And we should have the billet's about 8½ inches long, so I'm guessing we're going to have about a 16-inch billet. So either one big knife or probably enough for two. This is a piece left over from that billet. Now let's forge it into a new knife. Because of the edge bar, this has to be forged perfectly to shape. There's no grinding a bunch off. It's a little slow at first, but once I get the tip formed, then it starts to go pretty quick. I didn't have an exact design for this knife. I knew it was a bowie, and I knew it wasn't going to be one of my typical designs. I wanted a little more flair on this one. I think the blade is really close to where I want. Now it's time to go back and work on the tang. To create the tang, the first thing I'm going to use is the guillotine tool to isolate that steel. The guillotine tool leaves nice sharp edges and isolates the tang. Now I can draw it out. All right, I'm done the forging on this knife. You can see that I've welded a tang on here. This is just a piece of mild steel. And for those running down the comments telling me, oh, I can't believe you did that, this is how it was traditionally done for hundreds of years. So as long as you don't weld it right here, you're just fine. This will be inside the handle. So I'm going to profile this. I don't think I'm going to put a false edge on this. I really like the kind of smooth curve here, so I'm going to continue with that. And this one's going to be a frame handle, so I'm going to make a nice big guard, and then we'll work on some twist damascus for the frame. Well, I wanted to etch this just to make sure that this edge bar, which goes all the way down, is kind of the same thickness all the way down, because if it changed I'd have to grind some more, but it looks pretty even, so had to do that just to make sure. Pattern looks pretty cool, so let's grind the profile. I don't have a design for the blade, but I do have a pattern for the handle, so I'm using that here just to make sure my profile matches the handle. So there's the profile after grinding. It's all white because I have some anti-scale on it because it's going to go in the oven for a bunch of normalization thermocycles, and then we're going to heat treat it before we do anything else. And just to show you what the handle is going to look like, nice even curve around the handle. There'll be a nice guard on this, so I'm pretty happy with where it's going. Here it is after heat treating and tempering. It had a tiny little warp, so I just took the carbide straightening hammer to it, and it is nice and straight now. Let's get to the surface grinder, remove all this scale and these hammer marks, and then we'll be ready for grinding. So I got the blade all ground. I didn't show much of the grinding, but here it is, all sanded, at least to 220. Now I wanted to pause here and kind of figure out the guard and the guard spacer and the handle. So here's what the handle is going to look like. It's a nice smooth transition here, and I'm doing a more stylized guard here, a penny guard with these round discs at either end. For the handle, so this is going to be a frame handle construction, so I'm going to be doing some twist Damascus for the frame, and we're going to be using some of this mammoth tusk for the covers, the scales. This stuff's pretty thick, so I'm actually going to save some of this, cut about 1/8 of an inch off this. I'll probably use that for some folders. I've actually already cut this one, and it went really well. So let's go cut the other one. This is what we'll be using for this knife. I've cut the guard out of some 5/16, but the lugs are flat, so now it's time to just twist them up. So here's the guard so far. I went to the mill and created some flat parallel surfaces, and now I'm going to go to the laser upstairs, and we're going to laser this pattern on here so that we can get it exact. And then I'll slot the guard, and we can get going. There's the guard all fit up. Perfect fit on that. Not a gap in sight. Here's another good thing to do is take your knife, put a mirror on the top of the guard, and you should see a perfectly straight reflection of your knife. And you can see this one's perfectly straight. If I lift the mirror a little bit on one side, you see what happens. So this can tell you if your guard is straight, square to your knife. So here's the stack of Damascus I'm going to use for the twist bar, which is going to be the frame. So this one I've got a layer of nickel in the center, a double layer of 1084, so it'll be black, and then alternating 15 and 20, 1084, 15 and 20, 1084. So we're going to forge this down to 5/8 stock and then twist it. I've pretty much stopped using my TIG welder ever since I got the laser welder. This thing is amazing. This was a really long bar to twist, but I needed to go all the way around the frame. You'll see soon that I really didn't need to do this. Okay, here's our twist Damascus. Before I twisted this one, I cut this one at 3/4, twisted and pressed it. This is going to be our spacer. And here we have the bar that we're going to use to bend around the frame. Well, that was just a big failure. You can see the big separation there that goes all the way through. There's a bunch of other cracks. Like the surface cracks from the twist are okay, but when they start, when I bend it here, they widen. So, and I haven't even got this to the sharp point that I need for this. So this would be hard enough to do just with a piece of bar. But to do it with a piece of twist is just not going to happen. Instead, what I'm going to do is take the same stack, forge it again, leave it 1 inch square, twist it, and then flatten it out, and it should be big enough that I can just cut it out of the whole sheet and then just hollow out the center. Because then I'm just basically profiling it, and I don't need to bend it around, which I think will work a lot better. So I've reforged the Damascus for the frame, 1 inch, and then just fullered it out. So I got it pretty wide. May have to just trim this point down a little bit. But what I'm going to do is go surface grind it and kind of see how deep some of these cracks are and what I have to work with. So there it is, ground to shape. I was a little worried that, I don't know if you guys can see the little lines down here, and I was seeing them across here, and I was getting worried that those were D-lambs. And then I forgot that I have nickel in here, which always shows up as a line. So I think it's just fine. Now I'm going to just dip it and etch it, and we'll see what the edge looks like and if it's acceptable. Yeah, I am good with that. That looks really good. I will take it. So here we are so far. I went and slotted the spacer, and then there's 2 shims here, which are pure nickel. I've taken basically a piece of sheet metal here as a template. I've just glued it onto my handle, and this is where my pins are going to go. This is going to be my template to do the pins for the handle. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these through, and then I'm actually going to drill a bunch of holes through this. You can see I put the mark for where the tang goes. I want to heat treat this before I take any of the metal out of the inside, because I don't want this to warp. But I am going to drill a bunch of holes, and then I'll just do this with an angle grinder at the end. I've skeletonized the handle quite a bit, taken out a bunch of this. You'll notice that where the holes are, I've left a bunch, and you can see the line where the tang is. So what's going to happen is, after heat treat, I'm going to come in with an angle grinder and grind this center piece out, all of this, and then there'll be a straight part here, 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 and here, and that will give stability to the tang so it doesn't jiggle around. I'll make sure this is just perfect, but it should be perfectly skeletonized to the tang. So I've hardened the frame and the spacer. I've surface ground this to the same thickness as the tang. I'm ready to now cut the tang out of the center here and start to fit this so that I can, get it nice and snug. You'll notice that there's double holes here. I did end up taking almost a ½ inch off the front here, so I had to move the holes back because they just weren't centered. But yeah, next step. So now I'm going to take some Gorilla tape and tape the edge of this with 2 layers because I want a museum fit. So I'm going to tape that and then stack all these up and then grind to my tape. And that should give me my museum fit for these. So I've got this ground to the perimeter here. I haven't taken the tape off, but now it's time to go trim all this. It's a little thick right now, so we're going to even this up, and that should almost complete our handle. We just have final sanding to do. I have the handle scales all shaped and sanded to 220. I'll continue on those a bit later. Now it's time to actually cut the tang out of the frame. So I'm just going to go with an angle grinder and get the majority of it out, and then we'll go to the grinder and just get it all perfect so it's fitting in the tang and there's no slop. So I got this set up with a really thin platen so I can go and just grind to my lines and get right in there. So we got this all ground, and just to check it, we put the liner in, the shim, and fits perfectly. No wobble at all, so that'll seal up just nice when we get some epoxy in there. I've done a bunch of finish work on the fittings. These are all sanded to 2000. I need to go coin these, but I've sanded the handle scales to 1000, and I'm ready to do one of my favorite parts, which is buff this ivory. So let's go do that, and I'll show you how cool that looks. Almost ready to put this knife together. Got some hot salting to do on the guard, etching on the bolster, blade, and frame, and we should be ready to put it together. All 3 of these are sanded to 2000. Now it's time to get them in the acid and get them etched. So checking in where we are, I have etched all of the Damascus, including the spacer, the frame, and the blade, which you'll see at the end. I've gone ahead and assembled the handle and put the real nickel-silver pins in, and I've just cut them off roughly. I'm going to go grind them to about, an eighth above, and then I need to peen each one of these in, and then we're going to dome the pins.